Okay. Hello out there in video land. We're continuing our reading of Ulysses, and we have left our previous chapter, and now we're on to the episode called Cyclops, which will be lots of fun. There's lots of different styles of writing and descriptions in this one, as in all of them, actually, but this is particularly robust, as you'll see just from our early reading today. So that being said, let me call up my chat list, and here we go. I was just passing the time of day with old Troy of the DNP at the corner of Arbor Hill there, and be damned, but a bloody sweep came along, and he near drove his gear into my eye. I turned around and let him have the weight of my tongue when who should I see dodging along the stony batter? Only Joe Hines. "Hello, Joe," says I. "How are you blowing? Did you see that bloody chimney sweep who near shoved my eye out with his brush?" "Soot's look," says Joe. "Who's the old bollocks you were talking to?" "Oh, old Troy," says I. "Was in the force. I'm on two minds not to give that fellow in charge. I'm of two minds not to give that fellow in charge for obstructing the thoroughfare with his brooms and ladders." "What are you doing in these parts?" says Joe. "Ah, devil a much," says I. "There's a bloody big foxy thief beyond by the Garrison Church at the corner of Chicken Lane. Old Troy was just giving me a wrinkle about him. Lifted any God's quantity of tea and sugar to pay 3 bob a week. Said he had a farm in the country. Down off a hop of my thumb by the name of Moses Herzog, over there near Hayti Street." "Circumcised," says Joe. "Aye," says I, "a bit off the top. An old plumber named Garrity. I'm hanging on to his taw now for the past fortnight, and I can't get a penny out of him." Next.
"Got the layer on now," says Joe. "Aye," says I. "How are the mighty fallen. Collector of bad and doubtful debts. But that's the most notorious bloody robber you'll meet in a day's walk, and the face on him, all pockmarks, would hold a shower of rain. Tell him," says he, "I dare him," says he, "and I double dare him to send you round here again. Or if he does," says he, "I'll have him summons up before the court, so will I, for trading without a licence." And he, after stuffing himself till he's fit to burst, Jesus, I had to laugh at the little Jewy getting his shirt out. "He drink me my cheese, he eat me my sugars, because he no pay me money." For non-perishable goods bought of Moses Herzog of 13 St. Kevin's Parade, Wood Key Ward merchant, hereinafter called the vendor, and sold and delivered to Michael E. Garrity, Esquire, of 29 Arbor Hill in the city of Dublin, Key Ward, gentleman, hereinafter called the purchaser, we daily get 5 pounds avoirdupois of the first choice tea at 3 shillings a pound avoirdupois, and 3 stone avoirdupois of sugar, crushed crystal, at 3 pence per pound avoirdupois. The said purchaser debtor to the said vendor of 1 pound 5 shillings and 6 pence sterling, for value received, which amount shall be paid by said purchaser to said vendor in weekly installments every 7 calendar days of 3 shillings and no pence sterling. And the said non-perishable goods shall not be pawned or pledged or sold or otherwise alienated by the said purchaser, but shall be and remain and be held to be the sole and exclusive property of the said vendor, to be disposed of at his good will and pleasure, until the said amount shall have been duly paid by the said purchaser to said vendor in the manner herein set forth, as this day hereby agreed between the said vendor and his heirs, successors, trustees, and assigns of the one part, and the said purchaser, his heirs, successors, trustees, and assigns of the other part."
Are you a strict TT, says Joe. Not taking anything between drinks, says I. What about paying our respects to our friend, says Joe. Who, says I. Sure he's in John of God's off his head, poor man. Drinking his own stuff, says Joe. Aye, says I. Whiskey and water on the brain. Come around to Barney Kiernan's, says Joe. I want to see the citizen. Barney Mavourning's be it, says I. Anything strange or wonderful, Joe? Not a word, says Joe. I was up at that meeting in the City Arms. What was that, Joe? Says I. Cattle traders, says Joe, about the foot and mouth disease. I want to give the citizen the hard word about it. So he went round by the Linen Hall barracks and the back of the courthouse, talking of one thing or another. Decent fellow, Joe, when he has it, but sure, like that he never has it. Jesus, I couldn't get over that bloody Fox Garrity, the daylight robber, for trading without a license, says he. Jane.
In Innisfail the fair there lies a land, the land of holy Macon. There rises a watchtower beheld of men afar. There sleep the mighty dead, as in life they slept, warriors and princes of high renown. A pleasant land it is in sooth, of murmuring waters, fishful streams, where sport the gunnard, the plaice, the roach, the halibut, the gibbed haddock, the grills, the dab, the brill, the flounder, the mixed coarse fish generally, and other denizens of the aqueous kingdom, too numerous to be enumerated. In the mild breezes of the west and of the east, the lofty trees wave in different directions their first-class foliage. The wafty sycamore, the Lebanonian cedar, the exalted plane tree, the eugenic eucalyptus, and other ornaments of the arboreal world with which that region is thoroughly well supplied. Lovely maidens sit in close proximity to the roots of the lovely trees, singing the most lovely songs, while they play with all kinds of lovely objects, as for example, golden ingots, silvery fishes, crans of herrings, drafts of eels, codlings, creels of fingerlings, purple sea gems, and playful insects. And heroes voyage from afar to woo them, from Eblana to Slievemargy, the peerless princes of unfettered Munster and of Connaught, the just of smooth, sleek Leinster, and of Cruachan's land, and of Armagh the Splendid, and of the noble district of Boyle, princes, the sons of kings. Next, please.
And there rises a shining palace, whose crystal glittering roof is seen by mariners who traverse the extensive seas in barks built expressly for that purpose. And thither comes all the herds and fatlings and first fruits of the land, for O'Connell Fitzsimon takes toll of them, a chieftain descended from chieftains. Thither the extremely large wains bring foison of the fields, flaskets of cauliflowers, floats of spinach, pineapple chunks, ragoon beans, strikes of tomatoes, drums of figs, drills of sweets, spherical potatoes, and tallies of iridescent kale, York and Savoy, and trays of onions, pearls of the earth, and punnets of mushrooms and custard marrows, and fat vetches, and bear and rape, and green, yellow, brown, russet, sweet, big, bitter, ripe, pommeled apples, and chips of strawberries, and sieves of gooseberries, pulpy and pearlous, and strawberries fit for princes, and raspberries from their cane. Next.
And you passed me by. I'm lost at the moment. I don't know where we are.
Donna, if you're in the Gabbler, it's page 242, line 100.
42. Sorry for the delay, guys.
That's okay.
It's actually-
It's a Cyclops episode.
Yeah, and it is
Oh,
literally.
you had the Gabbler. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
242. I invested in the Gabbler just to be normal.
Okay.
Okay. Did you
And
find it?
I have 242, line 100. I dare him, says he.
Yeah,
You got
yeah.
it.
Exactly. Okay. So
Okay,
in
here we
that
go.
case, yeah.
Okay. I dare him, says he, and I double dare him. Come out here, Garrity, you notorious bloody hill and dale robber. And by that way, when the herds innumerable of bellwethers and flushed ewes and yearling rams and lambs and stubble geese and medium steers and roaring mares and polled calves and long wolves and store sheep and cuffs prime springers and culls and sow pigs and bacon hogs and the various different varieties of highly distinguished swine and Angus heifers and polly bullocks of immaculate pedigree together with prime premiated milch cows and beeves. And there is ever heard a trampling, cackling, roaring, lowing, bleating, bellowing, rumbling, grunting, champing, chewing of sheep and pigs and heavy hoofed kine from pasture lands of Lusk and Rush and Carrickmines, and from the streamy vales of Thomond, from McGillicuddy's reeks, the inaccessible and lordly Shannon the unfathomable, and from the gentle declivities of the place of the race of Pier, their udders distended with superabundance of milk, and butts of butter and reddits of peas, and farmers' firkins, and targets of lamb, and crannocks of corn, and oblong eggs in great hundreds, various in size, the agate with the dun. So we turned into Barney Kiernan's kitchen. Sorry, we turned into Barney Kiernan's, and there, sure enough, was the citizen up in the corner having a great confab with himself and that bloody mangy mongrel Garryowen, and he waiting for what the sky would drop in the way of drink. There he is, says I, in his glory hole, with his Krushkin lawn and his load of papers working for the cause. The bloody mongrel let a grouse out of him would give you the creeps. Be a corporeal work of mercy if someone would take the life of that bloody dog. I'm told for a fact he ate a good part of the breeches off a constabulary man in Santry that came round one time with a blue paper about a license. Stand and deliver, says he. That's all right, citizen, says Joe. Friends here. Pass friends, says he. Then he rubs his hand in his eye and says he, what's your opinion of the times? Doing the rapparee and Rory of the Hill, but begod Joe was equal to the occasion. I think the markets are on a rise, says he, sliding his hand on his fork. So begod the citizen claps his paw on his knee and he says, foreign wars is the cause of it. And says Joe, sticking his thumb in his pocket, it's the Russians' wish to tyrannize. I give over your bloody codding, Joe, says I. I've a thirst on me I wouldn't sell for half a crown. Give it a name, citizen, says Joe. Wine of the country, says he. What's yours, says Joe. Ditto Macanasby, says I. 3 pints, Terry, says Joe. And how's the old heart, citizen, says he. Never better a cara, says he. What, Gary? Are we going to win, eh? And with that, he took the bloody old Towser by the scruff of the neck, and by Jesus, he nearly throttled.
Oh. The figure seated on a large boulder at the foot of a round tower was that of a broad-shouldered, deep-chested, strong-limbed, frank-eyed, red-haired, feely-freckled, shaggy-bearded, wide-mouthed, large-nosed, long-headed, deep-voiced, bare-kneed, brawny-handed, hairy-legged, ruddy-faced, sinewy-armed hero. From shoulder to shoulder he measured several ells, and his rock-like mountainous knees were covered, as was likewise the rest of his body, wherever visible, with a strong growth of tawny prickly hair in hue and toughness similar to the mountain gorse, Ulex europaeus. The wide winged nostrils, from which the bristles of the same tawny hue projected, were of such capaciousness that within their cavernous obscurity the field lark might easily have lodged her nest. The eyes, in which a tear and smile strove ever for mastery, were of the dimensions of a good-sized cauliflower. A powerful current of warm breath issued at regular intervals from the profound cavity of his mouth, while in rhythmic resonance the loud, strong hail reverberations of his formidable heart thundered rumblingly, causing the ground, the summit of the lofty tower, and the still loftier walls of the cave to vibrate and tremble. He wore a long, unsleeved garment of recently flayed oxhide, reaching to the knees, and a loose kilt, and this was bound about his middle by a girdle of plaited straw and rushes. Beneath this he wore trews of deerskin, roughly stitched with gut. His nether extremities were encased in high Balbriggan buskins, dyed in lichen purple, the feet being shod with brogues of salted cowhide laced with the windpipe of the same beast. From his girdle hung a row of sea stones which jangled at every moment of his portentous frame, and on these were graven with rude yet striking art the tribal images of many Irish heroes and heroines of antiquity. Cuchulainn, Conn of 100 battles, Niall of 9 hostages, Brian of Kincora, the Ardry Malachi, Art McMurrogh, Shane O'Neill, Father John Murphy, Owen Rowe, Patrick Sarsfield, Red Hugh O'Donnell, Red Jim McDermott, Sagarth Ahan, O'Grady, Michael Dwyer, Franny Higgins, Henry Joy McCracken, Goliath, Horace Wheely, Thomas Conniff, Peg Wolfington, the village blacksmith, Captain Moonlight, Captain Boycott, Dante Alighieri, Christopher Columbus, S. Fursa, S. Brendan, Marshall McMahon, Charlemagne, Theobald Wolfe Tone, the mother of the Maccabees, the last of the Mohicans, the Rosa Castile, the man for Galway, the man that broke the bank at Monte Carlo, the man in the Gap, the woman who didn't, Benjamin Franklin, Napoleon Bonaparte, John L. Sullivan, Cleopatra, Savornine Delish, Julius Caesar, Paracelsus, Sir Thomas Lipton, William Tell, Michelangelo Hayes, Muhammad, the Bride of Lammermoor, Peter the Hermit, Peter the Packer, Dark Rosaline, Patrick W. Shakespeare, Brian Confucius, Murtaugh Gutenberg, Patricio Velasquez, Captain Nemo, Tristan and Isolde, the first Prince of Wales, Thomas Cook and Son, the Bold Soldier Boy, Aaron Pogue, Dick Turpin, Ludwig Beethoven, the Colleen Bawn, Waddler Healy, Angus the Culdee, Dolly Mount, Sidney Parade, Ben Houth, Valentine Greatrakes, Adam and Eve, Arthur Wellesley, Boss Croker, Herodotus, Jack the Giant Killer, Gautama Buddha, Lady Godiva, the Lily of Killarney, Balor of the Evil Eye, the Queen of Sheba, Aki Nagel, Joe Nagel, Alessandro Volta, Jeremiah O'Donovan Rosa, Don Philip O'Sullivan Bear, a couched spear of acuminated granite rested by him, while at his feet reposed a savage animal of the canine tribe, whose stertorous gasps announced that he was sunk in uneasy slumber, a supposition confirmed by hoarse growls and spasmodic movements, which his master repressed from time to time by tranquilizing blows of a mighty cudgel rudely fashioned out of Paleolithic stone. Next, please.
If I could interrupt, if you want to look at your chat and click on the photograph I sent, you'll see Joyce is describing the famous photograph of him.
Oh,
Mike Cusack.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah.
The cudgel and everything, and the beard.
It's absolutely wonderful.
The birds could nest in. Yeah, forgive me for interrupting, but it was just.
No. This is great. After reading the part, it is actually good to see the raw material that Joyce has fashioned into this paragraph.
They put his statue that looks just like that up outside the stadium, the headquarters of the Gaelic Athletic Association. You know, at the Cusack stand and the statue, and he's holding the cudgel. Anyway, there you go.
Right.
That's good, Joe. That's good.
Yeah.
So anyhow, Terry brought the 3 points. Joe was standing, and Big Ob, The sight nearly left my eyes when I saw him lend out a quid. As true as I'm telling you, a good-looking sovereign. And there's more where that came from, says he. Why, you're robbing the poor box, Joe, says I. Sweet on me brow, says Joe. 'Twas the prudent member gave me a wheeze. I saw him before I met you, says I, sloping around by Pill Lane and Greek Street, with his cod's eye counting up all the guts of the fish. Who comes through Mitchen's land? Bedlight and sabre arm, O Bloom, the son of Rory, it is he. Impervious to fear is Rory's son, he of the prudent soul. For the old woman of Princess Street, says the citizen, the subsidized organ, the pledge-bound party on the floor of the house. And look at this blasted rag, says he. Look at this, says he. The Irish Independent, if you please. Founded by Parnell to be the working man's friend. Listen to the births and deaths in the Irish for all Ireland Independent, and I'll thank you, and the marriages. And he starts reading them out. Gordon, Barnfield Crescent, Exeter, Redmini of Iffley, St. Anne's on Sea, the wife of William T. Redmayne of a son. How's that, eh? Wright and Flint, Vincent and Gillis to Rota Marion, daughter of Rosa, and the late George Alfred Gillis, 179 Clapham Road, Stockwell, Playwood, and Ridgedale at St. Jude's, Kensington, by the very revered Dr. Forrest, Dean of Worcester, eh? Deaths, Bristow at Whitehall Lane, London, Carr, Stoke, Newington of gastritis and heart disease, Cockburn at the Moat House, Chepstow. I know that fellow, says Joe, from bitter experience. Cockburn, Dempsey, wife of Davy Dempsey, late of the Admiralty, Miller, Tottenham, aged 85, Welsh, June 12 at 35, Canning Street, Liverpool, Isabella Helen. How's that for a national press, eh, my brown son? How's that for Miss Martin Murphy, the Bantry robber? Ah, well, says Joe, handing around the bawsy. Thanks be to God they had the start of us. Drink that, citizen. I will, says he, honourable person. Help, Joe, says he, and all down the form. Next, please.
Are we going to talk about it? Oh,
We are.
sorry,
I'm gonna, what
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
doing, I'm gonna let Katrina read, and then when she's finished reading, then
All right.
we would have a discussion, okay?
my apologies, Katrina.
No problem. Oh, ow, don't be talking. I was blue moldy for the want of that pint. Declare to God I could hear it hit the pit of my stomach with a click. And lo, as they quaffed their cup of joy, a godlike messenger came swiftly in, radiant as the eye of heaven, a comely youth, and behind him there passed an elder of noble gait and countenance, bearing the sacred scrolls of law, and with him his lady wife, a dame of peerless lineage, fairest of her race. Little Alf Bergen popped in round the door and hid behind Barney's snug, squeezed up with the laughing. And who was sitting up there in the corner that I hadn't seen, snoring, drunk, blind to the world? Only Bob Doran. I didn't know what was up, and Alf kept making signs out of the door. And begob, what was it? Only that bloody old pantaloon, Dennis Breen. Sorry. Somebody want to carry on?
I'll finish off if you want. And Dennis
Yeah.
Breen, it was all bloody old pantaloon Dennis Breen in his bass slippers with two bloody big books tucked under his oxter and the wife hot foot after him. Unfortunate, wretched woman trotting like a poodle. I thought Elf would split. I'm just going to finish the page.
Okay.
Look up, look up. Is that okay? Look up at him. Look at him, says he. Breen, he's traipsing all over Dublin with a postcard someone sent him with U.P. up on it. To take and he doubled up. Is that good?
Yeah, let's stop right there. And actually, we'll start our next reading. I'll start with Little Alf Bergen.
Okay,
after we have a bit of a discussion.
sure. Okay.
Okay, so Sylvia, did you have something in particular you wanted to discuss?
No, I just no, I just wanted to know more about it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
It's good, Sylvia, because we were going to take it in smaller chunks. I think we got
Yeah.
carried away, and I think part of it is this is so nice to read out loud. This particular chapter, my God, it's fun to read.
It is. It is.
Mm.
We have an unknown narrator in this episode.
Yes.
Oh,
Who is-
there's Donica.
Hey, have
Good
been
to
back a
see you.
while, Sylvia.
Oh, have you? Sorry.
It's okay. No, I was just saying the narrator in this episode is unknown. And from what I gather of him, he's a nasty piece of work. He's not a nice guy.
Yeah, he's pretty sarcastic and critical.
And I guess to take it from the top, when he talks, like right away in this Cyclops chapter, he just about gets hit in the eye. So first paragraph, we're already focusing here on the eyes.
Yeah, the very first word is I.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it's very good. Very good. I hadn't thought about
I was passing the time of day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
Mhm.
Why do we have an asterisk in front of that eye now that I'm the possessor of a new shiny gabbler? I have an asterisk in front of the eye, but it doesn't seem to refer to anything later.
I think in my book, actually in the Wordsworth, is a little interesting design which you could kind of consider the side view of an eye.
Okay.
oh, really? Oh,
Yeah, do you have Wordsworth, Sylvia?
no, I've got Gabler, or no, well, the equivalent of Gabler.
Yeah, it's kind of a little, I don't know if you can see it, but I'll try. Where are you? See
Okay.
that little black dot there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, that actually is kind of a half circle type thing with a
Oh,
line behind it. And if you look at it, at least my imagination, I could say that that's like an eye.
Donna, in addition to that, I think if you check in the Gabbler, I think each chapter begins with an asterisk.
oh, does it?
Okay.
Oh, does it?
See here.
Yes, I think you're
Yes.
right.
There's
That's right.
Joe, what are you? What are we looking?
the original 1922 edition, and there's
Oh,
Good.
right.
nothing there.
There's
Huh.
nothing there. Okay.
That's interesting.
That's an
Yeah,
intro.
I never noticed that. Huh.
This is the
Oh,
printer, so.
Well, you should expect that Joyce, to a certain degree, would suffer the same fate as Shakespeare, which is people started messing with his plays
mhm.
very quickly and deciding what was part of the play and what wasn't. And there's a lot of dispute about that.
Mm.
Yeah.
In terms of Joel, do you know, in terms of the editions that Joyce had sort of revised and so forth, did that asterisk appear under his sort of hand, or was it a later?
I don't know. I've never gone after it before. This is the first time I've ever checked it out.
Right.
So you could see the 1934. I have most of the editions, but by the time you go through them all, I just don't know. You know,
Fair enough.
Mhm,
It
mhm.
doesn't matter. I was
Yeah.
just raising it in case anybody knew.
I'd say it's an intrusion, a complete intrusion.
Okay.
You know, because he doesn't do that.
Just by the way, one of my jobs many years ago, back in the 80s, in the Prime Minister's office, we had to bring in a new constitution that covered all the amendments. So we're working from the old text, and in one line in brackets there was HC, and it clearly, looking at the files, it had continued for almost 50 years in the text, and it
Yeah.
turned out to be higher case.
Oh,
It was an editor's note for higher case.
Printers.
So maybe this is something similar.
Interesting.
Okay.
Hmm.
I'd just like to point out here that we had on this first page here that we had this breezy conversation between two Dublin characters. It very quickly goes into a criticism, the classic criticism of the Jew, who is, only all business and taking advantage of the Gentiles, which is a theme throughout this whole thing. So, and these two guys there's a whole mixture of this business language with weights and measurements and all of that kind of thing.
And certainly later on in the novel, Stephen and Bloom are chatting, and Stephen gets quite nasty and sings a song to him, which was clearly going to be offensive. So I don't know what that's about.
Yeah.
It's about Hugh of Lincoln, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
He sings a song about Huey Hughes, and that they were all dead in the end. I think it referred to some pogrom or other.
Yeah, the Jew's daughter.
The Jew's daughter who invited the little Gentile boy in and then killed him.
Yeah, with a penknife.
So it was a classic, blood sacrifice, children's style.
You see, this narrator is known as the malicious narrator. He's talking about his employer. He's quite happy to be paid by this Jewish gentleman.
Yeah.
And at the same time, he's, that Irish phrase we use, the bail booked. He's a poor mouth. He hasn't a good word for anyone.
Yeah.
Even himself. Look how the mighty are fallen. Look where I'm at now, for Christ's sake. He's complaining about himself.
He'd been known as the craw thumper.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's a complete parasite. He's hanging on for what'll fall in the way of drink. But there's sorry, I'm cutting across people there. I beg your pardon. When I go on, just to draw attention, there is a very interesting little twist. Oh, it's a few pages in. If I can go on, can I, Duncan?
Sure.
Where Joe Hines, remember him?
Yeah.
Was at the funeral, taking the names, and then he was in the newspaper, and he owes Bloom, 3 shillings, is it? And Bloom says, I was just down at the cashier. He's still there, to give him the hint.
Yeah, right.
And so he has to go to Nanetti to get signed off, and then go to the cashier. The question is, Joe Hines now has money. Where did he get it? Right? Now, and there's an ambiguous comment, and he says, and there's more. Where'd that come from? Says, were you ramming the poor box, Joe? Says I. Sweat of my brow. 'Twas the prudent member gave me the wheeze. Who is the prudent member? Well, Mr. Nanetti, who signs off the debt, the chits for expenses, is a member of the House of Commons, and he's referred to as the prudent member.
Oh, really? Okay.
So that would be, he could have got the money from the cash box in the Irish Times on account of his expenses.
Oh, okay. Thanks for clearing that, because I went with Bloom on that.
Yeah, I thought it was Bloom too.
Bloom is always so conservative, and he notes down all of his expenses and all this kind of thing.
Wait a minute. Bloom got the expenses, yes, but we don't know whether Joe Hines did or not. He says he got it from the prudent member, but that phrase is also used to describe Bloom. And that's the phrase that the malicious narrator picks up of him. Oh, I saw him before I met you, sloping around Pill Lane. In other words, he's seen Bloom. Right. So he's, I got it from the prudent member, and the other guy thinks it's from Bloom. Now, we don't know where he got the money, but the question arises, did Joe Hines hear about throwaway? And has he won on the horses?
Oh,
okay. See? So throughout this, have we a guy who's won on the horses who's not saying anything.
Okay.
That would fit with the character, wouldn't it?
Well,
That's me.
there you go. Or have we a guy who just got some money on expenses in the Irish Times, and you could blow it whatever wind is blowing and change your mind as often as you want. No answer that anyone seems to know of. but you see, you're getting the kind of confusion. If he did get the bet, now I've searched, I can't find it as to who could have told him about throwaway. But if he did, then it lends a terrible further twist to the later part of the story when they all turn on Bloom. And does the guy who actually won on Bloom weren't on throwaway, actually turn on Bloom as well, while he's doing the same thing as he's accusing him of? So you can see, maybe we're just all reading too much into it.
No.
I don't think so.
That actually makes good sense, and that's a common human trait, which is to accuse someone else of what one is actually doing.
Yeah.
Way to distract.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. So you won't get. I haven't got an answer. I've wrestled with that monster several times. With the word search, trying to find anything, and I have never been able. But it's just. It's all part of the chaos. This is the Cyclops cave of.
Oh, well, tell us more about Cyclops then, Joe.
Cyclopes are huge monsters of human form with one eye. All the kids play with toys like that now.
Oh.
One eye in the middle of the head. And the boys go ashore, the usual thing, look for water, and get into this cave. But the owner of the cave, Mr. Cyclops, Polyphemus, comes home, sees them all, and locks them in with a big stone. And I think he has 2 of them for lunch. They're also cannibals, but they're giants. And that's what all these giant lists are. The reader is being made to cope with the giants. We are fighting the Cyclops as readers, you see.
And Odysseus is in there with them, Joe, isn't he? He's locked away.
Yeah, they're all locked in. And
we're all locked in, yeah.
And Odysseus says, he gets in a conversation with him. And it reminds him of the duty of hospitality. You're supposed to look after us.
You're not supposed to eat your guest.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to bash their brains out and eat them. That's
and
bad manners.
Cyclops says to him, "Well, what's your name?" And he says in Greek, Utes, which sounds like Odysseus. Utes means nobody.
Mm-hmm. And Ulysses Unbound, that Terence Killeen refers to the unknown narrator as no man.
No man, yeah. And so when eventually Cyclops calls for help because he's injured, he's blinded, the neighbors say, who's after blind? Who's causing this trouble? And he says, nobody. And they said, well, go back to bed then.
Yeah.
The Cyclops are in Homer are giants.
Yeah.
And they are one-eyed, and they've no cultivation, no laws, no institutions, and no ships. They're the 4 characteristics. They are, of course, the characteristics that the British apply to the greater nation called the Irish. The Irish have no ships, they've no laws. They're all barbarians. And you see these Punch magazine cartoons of Irish and people in the 1800s, and they all have ape-like features.
Yeah, very scurrilous.
They are human animals, to quote the current phrase. That the people you persecute, you must dehumanize them. You see, and that was done on this island. And Mr. Cromwell. and others. But so Little Britain Street. Little Britain is a translation of Britannia Beag, which is the Irish for Wales. But in this context, it's the Cyclops cave, and the one eye is the bad eyesight is they have a myopic view.
Mhm.
Got an eyesight problem, and they have a myopic view of Ireland and Irish history. And so those things are running through it. But you, for instance, I'm kind of running on the way Odysseus, they hand over, they suggest to him a gift of a few barrels of wine they had brought with them, as a and he drinks all that and he's drunk, falls asleep.
Falls asleep. Right.
At that point, they take a very large beam and they run it through his only eye.
Mhm.
And that's how they're then able to make their escape, because he can't see. And you're going to see as soon as Bloom goes in, he doesn't want to get caught up in a round. So when there's offered something, he says, "Oh, have a cigar." You see, and he escapes from the round system with the burning cigar. This guy. So that's but that's enough for me to. Does that answer it sufficiently, Sylvia, for the moment?
Oh, I just think it's marvelous.
Okay. There you go.
Oh,
Joe, can I back you up to about 5 minutes ago when you said it's 2:11 in the Gabbler? Sweat on my brow, says Joe. 'Twas the prudent member gave me the wheeze. I had always interpreted that as Bloom gave me the heads up that the cashier was open, so he went and got money from the cashier, and it wasn't a selfless suggestion on the part of Bloom because Heinz owes him money.
Yeah.
Bloom's hoping to connect.
There's three interpretations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Neneshi would have signed off his chit to, Neneshi is the production manager, so he signs off the chit for expenses. Or it could have been Bloom who told him, the cashier is actually physically in the building, or that Bloom is a member of the Masonic Order. He's a prudent member.
Right.
Three horses, you can back there, and you can back any one of them.
Does give me the wheeze mean inform?
Yeah, gave me the tip.
Gave me the tip of where the job was, or where I could get some money, or whatever.
Yeah, it gave me the wheeze. Well, that could have been throwaway, or it could have been the cashiers at his desk.
Right.
We also use the phrase "give me the SP," which would be the starting price.
Well, please let me point out that this is the second person that owes Bloom.
Yeah.
And let's contrast that with Stephen, who generally owes everybody else.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Great. Just going back to all these great lists and the narrator, the question is, where are all these giant lists coming from? Whose head are they in?
Umberto Eco has a thing to say. He says that this listing by Joyce is actually a common rhetorical technique in medieval literature.
Yeah.
And it is to show the fullness of everything. And I have to admit that when these lists are read, even though I know they're just lists, my head is kind of like expanding in all these different directions as each person or each thing is listed. My mind cannot help but go on that particular thing, and then there's another one, and there's another one, and so it's kind of this. So,
but it's also an epic convention, right? To go
yes.
with the list, like the list of ships in Homer. And I think for more modern, for Americans, isn't it the list of fish in Moby Dick and things like that?
Yeah, yeah. And the idea of it also is that it is to demonstrate completeness.
Yeah.
It's also Joyce showing off.
Yes,
It's
of course.
great
Yes,
color.
absolutely. Absolutely. On completeness and scale.
But it of course, and great humor in there because, you know, Dolly Mount is not a person, you know, great history, it's a place. We all know is a railway station. These are not people, some of them. And Christopher Columbus isn't really Irish.
Right.
And he sticks Patrick on to W. Shakespeare.
Yeah, Patrick Shakespeare, you know.
Patrick W. Shakespeare.
And Lady Godiva is a very remote Irish possible connection.
Well, Ludwig von Beethoven, that'd be a bit of a stretch too, right?
Sure, but
Yeah.
Ludwig, it was something to do with Aristotle.
Sorry, Orla?
Sorry, Jim was talking.
I just made an interjection. Ludwig O. van Beethoven.
But I think some of it too serves as a contrast to break up the tawdriness and the ugliness of the bar scene.
Yes.
Some people say this is a second narrator, you see? Say it's multiple narrators. You use whatever you fancy, really.
But I'll go along with what you just said, Jane, that actually it does, you know, the everyday life in most places is pretty tawdry, and this is particularly tawdry. But, you know, certainly to take the Cyclops character, Michael Cusack character, you know, he's talking about, he's doing that epic, you know, the glory of Ireland, et cetera, and they're using all these old flowing, convoluted, romantic descriptions to kind of give, you know, well, excuse me if I'm using this term, to shine the turd, to put a shine on the turd.
That's good.
Yeah, you get the lovely maidens sit in close proximity at the roots of the lovely trees. These are the fishwives of the fish market he's describing, and you know, singing the most lovely songs. This is one of the roughest parts of Dublin, with the Dublin vernacular in full flow. And these charming ladies will slit your throat as quick as they'd look at you, you know?
But there might be good singers though, Joe.
And there could be beautiful singers and heroes voyage from afar to a Blana from Sleepmarge, the princes of unfettered Munster and Connacht. These are all the fish dealers. The princes of Munster and Connacht. So it's countering the nastiness of the characters throughout.
Isn't
Just
that
going
how
back to your
Sorry,
Dave. Just a quick one. On your point about multiple narrators, Joe, when I was reading this, listening to the RTE Players version, it's the same character's voice and accent that is the narrator. So again, that's just an interpretation, but that's the way they did it.
See, some people say this is the citizen's internal monologue, that
Correct.
this
Yes.
citizen sees, that, you know, the citizen looks around him and he sees this wondrous ancient beauty in like a lorry load of fish going by.
Okay, does anybody know the link between Aristotle and the lists? Because years and years ago, and I hadn't even read Joyce, and there was some Joyce, met some guy I vaguely knew who was a Joyce lecturer who now teaches in a university, and he said, Joyce, the lists are all a reflection of Aristotle. He's just talking to me.
Yeah.
So I've always remembered Aristotle lists Joyce. And I'm trying to cog it quickly. And there's something to do with categorism.
Yeah. Aristotle was trying to be very precise and complete, and was actually kind of using what I said, Umberto Eco's thing, that when you make list and you include lots and lots of stuff, it automatically gives the impression that you are covering everything.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just was hoping that with somebody who knew classics, aside from you, Joe.
Well, you'd need philosophy, wouldn't you? There, you know,
Oh, philosophy, yes.
that to be. I bet you if you Google Aristotle,
I have
you get
the
it.
categories open in front, but they say, and I don't know the influence of Kant on Joyce, but they mention Locke, Berkeley, Hume, Kant, Hegel, Brentano, and Heidegger. They're too late, but Aquinas, Descartes, Spinoza, Leibniz, Locke, Berkeley, and I noticed. Oh no, it was last night in Finnegan's Wake. They mentioned monads, and that's Spinoza.
Yeah.
So there's some undercurrent all through this of philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know what it means. So there you go.
Well, I'll just throw another thing out. I don't even know if I agree with myself on this, but sometimes people make lists of things in their head to rid themselves of other thoughts, to close off. It's almost like people on the spectrum do that, you know, lots of lists of saying lots of things over and over to distance yourself from maybe some kind of ugliness or trouble. I don't know if that's relevant here, but I'm just throwing it into the mix.
Mm-hmm.
That is exactly what it does. It distances us from ugliness.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's the mock heroic convention, right, Joe, where you have the lofty rhetoric of the description compared to the tawdriness of what's described. And that's where the humor comes in with the mock heroic, because you see that Joyce is employing, you know, he's coming out with a barrage of all his rhetorical artillery pieces, and then you look really at what he's describing.
And he's answering the chauvinism. So, you know, the citizen will make a statement. I know we're ahead of ourselves. Citizen will make a statement, and then this, let's say, narrator comes in with a list and some other view of it, which usually exaggerates it beyond what the citizen has said.
Yeah.
But in so doing, destroys that argument. In other words, in a sense, it's a defense of Bloom that the narration, it's that the author is putting in, because Bloom doesn't answer back until the very end, and the narrator or author is ridiculing the chauvinistic views, whoever expresses them.
Yes and no. Yes and no, depending upon the perspective of the person. Depending upon the perspective of the person, because like those lists and these grandiose rhetorical styles, you know, to one person would look like, as I said, it's you know, gilding the turd, and some think it's successful, that it does cover it up, and then to I'll use a prejudicial term here, to those who can see more clearly the contrast between the attempted description and the reality is very jarring.
Yeah. It's absolutely,
to use a really terrible example, which I hope no one takes offense at, some of our American celebrations are of this nature.
Oh,
you know, and I will be bold enough to use 4th of July tends to be particularly bad at this.
Yeah.
That the actual parades are, you know, compared to some other parades, pretty miserable. And it's just garish, and it doesn't quite do what the participants think they are doing.
Yeah.
but they're satisfied with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it exposes this sort of thing, exposes and covers up at the exact same time.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We would have multiple examples of that in Ireland. We're in got though there.
Yeah. No, we could probably go on forever with that. We could make our own list.
We could.
All right. Maybe we should read a little bit more, maybe another.
Duncan, just before you move on, this maybe is a little bit of a rabbit hole, but Michael Cusack, when he founded the GA, he had a committee. One of the people was J.P. Bracken, and J.P. Bracken's son, Brendan, went on to be the advisor to Churchill during the Second World War. So I'm speculating, did this man's personality was it anything similar to the citizens, as you know, the imitation of Cusack, and is that why he went the opposite direction to his father? Because this man Brendan Bracken is a bit of an anomaly.
Yes.
Sorry, and is he mentioned?
Oh no, I'm Sylvia. I just said I was going down a little bit of a rabbit hole here.
And I followed you, Jim.
Oh, good. Nice to have your company.
Okay, so I think I'm going to go. Let's do shorter
Just
reading
before
this
we
round.
stop, just before we the anchor, Colombo, yeah. Like this is a huge chunk that we took. I'm sorry to hold you up, but we actually read like 200
It's a big chunk. Yes, go ahead. I'm
plus
fine.
lines.
I can put even the mark for next week right now. We could
Okay.
spend the rest of the time reading this section.
Here's my question. If you're in the Gabbler, it's 240, page 245, and we're at line about 225. The citizen starts reading, and he's really disgusted with these lists. I think it's of births and deaths. Now, the only note I've got, and there's a question mark after it, is he not happy about this because there are too many English names for his liking? Or what is it what is the burr under the citizen's saddle on this one? Joe, you may have an idea.
That would appear to be it, Dave. There's too many English names in this Irish Independent, as he calls it. Well, that is the name of the paper.
Right. Okay.
All for Ireland. Is he calling that the Irish All for Ireland Independent?
Yeah.
Well, the Irish Independent is a newspaper. He says that just 2 lines above it.
Oh, no, I see, but he says the Irish All for Ireland Independent. Oh, sorry, Joe.
No, I'm just saying the same. Like it was called the Irish Daily Independent originally, and it was owned by that man he mentions at the end, Martin Murphy, the Bantry jobber. It was founded by a man from Bantry. You see, but all the people who would put notices in there would have Irish origins. There'd be no point in putting your marriage notice of your marriage of your daughter. But they're all living in Britain. They're not living in Ireland anymore.
Okay.
So it's no longer the Irish working man's friend. You see? And the guys are everywhere. They're elate of the Admiralty. How's that for a national press, my brown son? My brown son is it's a Hiberno English term of endearment, really, and how is that for Martin Murphy, the Bantry jobber? Is that it's distanced itself, or it's moved away from its roots?
Yeah, but a brown tongue is a liquor.
Is what, Orla?
It's crude slang.
Mm-hmm.
So he might have been saying that you're along the lines of, if somebody calls somebody a brown tongue, it's usually an insult.
Mm-hmm. Is it a racial reference?
No.
No, I'm looking at Sloat, Hiberno-English catchphrase and term of endearment.
Oh.
There's nothing about.
I've never heard the expression before.
I remember. Yeah, it's here. It's on my log.
I have a note that it's a penis, but I don't know where I got that note from.
You can imagine all the things people could read into it. What you really need is a Hiberno-English dictionary to give you the source. But the source is John Simpson is the person who's sourced here. So Sloat has looked up his Hiberno dictionary and taken that out. But your imagination can take you all sorts of places with that one.
Are we talking about this long list of names that actually starts with Irish and then slowly disintegrates into all kinds of?
No, we're on the next page. I think if that'd be.
We're on the next page. Okay.
Yeah, Duncan, where you want to start?
So
where you want to start is Gordon Barnfield Crescent.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
And they're all
just before we start, sorry, Joe, is that Martin Murphy there? Is that William Martin Murphy he's referring to, or is it a different Murphy?
It's William Martin Murphy, who died in 1919, and he bought the newspaper in 1904. So
yeah, but is it the famous William Martin Murphy that would have been the strike breaker in Dublin?
I believe so. That's my understanding.
Okay. No, I'm just checking that. Thank you.
So, but he's very, very much an Irishman, compared with.
That's right.
Interesting about the heart disease, Cockburn. And Joe says, "I know that fella from bitter experience." Pronounced Cockburn. But it's Cockburn to these guys.
That's right.
The only Cockburn they know.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you don't mind, I would like to go back to the previous name list.
Oh yeah, it's great that one.
And which is supposedly describing Michael Cusack.
Yeah.
And my reading of it is it starts with purely Irish names.
Yeah.
But slowly disintegrates into all kinds of names and titles and stuff like that.
Yeah, by the time you come to Goliath, about 4 lines into it, you're in Goliath. At that point, you are in humor. But above that are all Irish people of fame. Cuchulainn would be our version of Achilles in Bronze Age.
Well, you're in humor, but is it also not implying that maybe in Michael Cusack himself, the pure Gaelic Irishman, that actually in his mind, by this time, he's got so much world literature in his head that he cannot actually be purely Irish.
Michael Cusack.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if these are things in his head, it starts off, he wore a such and such, nether extremities from his girdle, and then it gets, which from his girdle hung a row of sea stones which dangled at every movement of his portentous frame, and on these were graven with rude yet striking art the tribal images of many Irish heroes and heroines of antiquity, and then begins the list of names.
It gets down to Captain Nemo, the captain of the Nautilus, and all this stuff.
Yeah, right. And what I'm saying, it starts off very purely Irish, but very soon disintegrates.
Yeah, and perhaps it explains why the citizen has no problem with St. Patrick. He thinks St. Patrick is a great guy. St. Patrick is not Irish. Shock horror among the doyens of Bardi Girdits. It comes from the wrong island.
Yeah, well, certainly the mother of the Maccabees and the last of the Mohicans were not Irish.
He might have been.
Yeah, but after Goliath, there
Yeah.
are a couple of Irish people, whether they're mythical or not. You've Captain Moonlight, Captain Boycott, T.
Yeah.
Paul
Yes.
Woodburn,
Yeah.
the man from Galway, John L. Sullivan, Peter the Packer, and Aaron Pogue.
Yeah. Andre Alighieri. I heard of him.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Wednesdays.
And we're Captain Boycott and Captain Midnight Irish Heroes.
Yeah.
No,
No.
An anti-hero.
No,
they would
Boycott
be
was an
opposite, right?
anti-hero.
well,
Captain Boycott was an anti-hero.
well, yes, he was boycotted. That's where the word came from.
That's where the word comes
Uh,
from, yeah.
Right.
And Captain Moonlight would have been sort of a name that say there was these guys called, what would they call them? The people, is it the People Day boys or the ribbon boys, the white boys? What they would do is they would make attacks on landlords at night time,
Right.
and Captain Moonlight would be the name they use if they wanted to send a message to the landlord.
Mhm.
That's right.
Peter the Packer, Dark Rosaline. That's a name for Ireland. You know?
Well, Peter the Packer was a person down in County Clare. He was one of the O'Briens, and he got the nickname Peter the Packer because he was so corrupt. Anytime there was going to be a court case against him, he packed the jury with his own people.
Peter the Packer. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thomas Cook and Son. They're the tourism company.
That's right.
Yeah, so, but it's great fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Oh God, you know that thing that people said after the rosary. You know, the litany.
The litany, yeah.
You know, it sounds a bit like the litany, or a litany of prayer, and know.
Oh, yeah. Pray for us.
We should have two people reading it and the second person saying pray for us.
I know. It just reminds me of that.
As Dave said, this is it's a feature of epic poetry. Because there were no schools in the Bronze Age. There were no schools. They mentioned the catalogue of ships in Homer. That's how you learn your geography, by listening to the bard and learning his song. So, and he says, and from such and such a place where so and so was king. It's like learning the kings of England, or in a list. But you learned it in a song form. 30 days had September, April, June. Song things the kids learned. This is how you got your education. But you wouldn't be getting a great education from this narrator.
It's like the lists in Bloom's house, where he lists all his things, the as.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, because the bloated rhetoric of this chapter does remind me of chapter 17 quite a bit. I mean, I think they're sort of complementary chapters in that regard. You have the sense in both that why say it in one word if 10 will suffice.
Could I just jump in there, Dave, as you've mentioned episode 17? I think I mentioned before that I'm doing a course in the James Joyce Centre on Ulysses, and last night we reached episode 17. And this business of UP up that we have on page 245 arose because when Bloom and Stephen climb over the wall to get into the house, they have a P against the wall. And some bright spark said, UP up. They were talking about the arc of the urine when they were describing it. So that, maybe that's the answer to UP up.
Yeah.
I love it.
So I was resisting mentioning this, but it's too delicious. It's sort of a non sequitur. But there was a band in the 60s called the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band. And they did a number called Intro and Outro. It was nothing but a list of names. Like on the drums, we have Queen Elizabeth. On the bassoon, we have King Kong. Starts out like their real names, and then just like this. I don't know if they got the idea from here, but it's very funny.
I remember the Bonzo Dog Doodah
Do
band.
you? Oh, bless you. Oh.
A bit like Dave D. Dozy, Beaky McIntitch.
Thank you, Donna.
That silenced everybody, I think, Jane.
Yeah, that's hard to do with this group.
Well, we're close enough to our 90 minutes that there's no sense in reading on. And so if anybody has any more points or questions about what we have read so far, please bring them up.
But so who's the old woman of Princess Street? Is that related to the Irish Independent, or what is that?
But Princess Street would be the Irish Times.
Oh,
You know,
was it?
that's in Princess.
Oh, okay. For the old woman of Princess Street, the subsidized organ. So he's talking about the newspaper. Is he saying that the old woman of Princess Street is the newspaper?
Is that a different paper then, Joe?
Oh, yeah, they're two different.
Was it? I don't know. Where's Princess Street? Because it's some.
Princess Street is turn right off Westmoreland Street.
Oh, sort of where the Irish Times is.
Yeah, it's just where the Irish Times offices were.
Oh yeah, but it's a side street. Okay.
7687. Yeah, it is. It's kind of a side street, but it was their main.
Oh, so they're talking about two different, because that would have been seen. That would have been a very British paper then, wouldn't it?
That'd be a unionist newspaper.
Yeah. And then he's contrasting the two papers, is he?
Well, he seems to be just dragging the old woman of Princess Street in there. You know, saying it's the Irish Independent is the same as it.
Yeah.
You know, the pledgeman party on the floor of the House. And look at this blasted rag. So he's denouncing the Irish Times, but he doesn't get into it. He moves on to the Irish Independent. He just says, like, the subsidized organ, the pledgeman party on the floor of the House. That's the House of Commons. And he moves on from it. So there's only two newspapers. Oh, you do have others at that stage.
Yeah. I love the Citizen. I just think he's, this cantankerous man.
Right.
Well, that's nice to hear that somebody loves him. That's
well, I know people like him as well.
Just looking ahead to the next one, could I suggest, because we haven't really discussed it, that we backtrack just a bit to where Katrina and I read and start with, and lo, as they quaff their cup of joy, a godlike messenger.
Yeah.
Would that be an appropriate place to start?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll mark it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sylvia, I apologize. I've got it wrong. I've just checked out what it's saying on Sloat. The Old Woman of Princess Street is the Freeman's Journal, according to Sloat. Yeah.
Oh.
So the plot thickens. But
thickens. And the subsidized organ is actually subsidized by whom?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Subsidized organ, the pledge bound party on the floor of the House.
Okay, Sloat has a big note on this now.
Yes. Yeah, I was just thinking of that. Yeah.
from 1890s onwards, the fortunes of the Freeman Journal declined because of increasing competition, which blah, 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 with the launch of the Irish Independent. By 1912, it was no longer a viable commercial endeavour. So the Irish Parliamentary Party, this is 1912, not 1904, which long supported by constitutionally moderate Freeman's Journal, intervened. The Freeman was subsequently run by a small group of party stalwarts. So that's the Irish Parliamentary Party.
And the Irish Parliamentary Party was truly an Irish party?
Well, this is Parnell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what, okay.
But you know, Parnell having departed them in 1889 and died the following year. And they would have been pursuing home rule.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Gosh, I got my facts on there. Sorry, everyone.
But he talks about Parnell, doesn't he? And
Yes, it says founded by Parnell to be the working man's friend.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to say, listen to the births and deaths in the Irish, for all Irish independent, and I'll thank you, and the marriages. And then, you know, and he's pointing out obliquely that it's no longer Irish, you know, it's no longer as Irish as it was, is my interpretation.
As Irish as he would like it to be.
As Irish as he would like it to be.
At the top of the page, he mentions Jeremiah O'Donovan Rossett, and he was the Fenian who founded the Phoenix, which was the Fenian newspaper.
Oh.
Not that it has any relevance to any of this, just if you're talking about newspapers.
Newspapers, right.
Hmm.
And Orla, which paper is that? Which page is that?
It's on the same page.
268 on the Wordsworth.
Line 199, Sylvia, on page 244, if you're in the Gabbler.
But you have to
Line 199.
remember as well that the citizen gets a
Oh,
little
yeah.
wrong. You know, so aside from us getting our facts wrong, we have the citizen getting his facts wrong as well going on.
It was apparently meant to be the funeral of Jeremiah O'Donovan Rossett as organized by Clark, which was the inspiration for the 1916 Rising.
Right.
Okay, so folks, get
I was
ready.
going to call him Arthur C. Clarke, but I can't remember his first name.
Okay, get ready to say goodbye to each other. Get ready to say goodbye to each other.
Wow.
Bye, everybody.
The enforcer is going to enforce.
Invoking closure.
Could we have a couple more seconds? I'm only joking.